Riley Chow here with Joel Kinnaman, who plays Ed Baldwin in For All Mankind, as well as Adam in the new season of In Treatment. Now, on For All Mankind in season 2, we pick up several years after the end of the first season. So, what happened to Ed in those years that we did not see?
Well, the end of the first season, the Shane Baldwin, Ed and Karen's son, 10-year-old son, dies tragically, and so of course, that's that's at the forefront of their life in the following 10 years. But kind of surprisingly, when we pick up 10 years later, I mean, I think surprisingly for me, because I'm so much thinking about this as the grand challenge of this character to portray this loss. But I think more logically for people that have actually gone through something like this, 10 years later, they've something like that, a loss like that is always going to be with you. But after 10 years, it's not on the surface in the same way. The wounds are there, but they're just you can't see them as well. So Ed has sort of sacrificed a lot of his own ambition and dreams of reaching deeper into space to be with his family and to be there. When this thing happened to Shane, he was on the moon, couldn't be there for Karen. She had to go through it herself, and that's something that Ed vows to never allow happen again. And then of course, over the season, then things happen and Ed finds his way back into space. But in the first few episodes, we actually see him in a more lighter mood than we've seen him. He kind of almost seems happier than we have before. But then, of course, in episode 3, we have this big cathartic scene where it all comes up to the surface, and we see that they're dealing with this pain, but they're dealing with it in it takes a different shape, and they project that pain onto other things in life. They've adopted a daughter, and they project that pain onto her, and the fear of something happening to her, the same thing happening to Shane happened to her, and then it all comes up to the surface. And I think it was really important for me and Chantel, who plays Karen, that we got to have that scene, because it sort of signified the whole challenge of that family's journey and our individual journeys as actors.
I've seen you say that it was interesting to play, an older age in the second season, and I guess that'll continue with the third season. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so age becomes a bigger and bigger part of the performance in For All Mankind, because we jump about 10 years per season. So I'm in the middle of shooting the third season right now, and there's the same kind of jump. So of course, there's more time in makeup in the morning. We're adding prosthetics, and there's those layers to it. But it also becomes interesting in terms of your performance. I think from 40 to 50, if you're a healthy person that hasn't had something unfortunate happen to you, and you're a reasonably active person, as of course Ed is an athletic guy, you're not going to see that big of a difference physically. Your walk isn't going to change noticeably. The way that your posture is not going to change. But from 40 to 60, that's when you start seeing things. It's like you might not get up from a chair at the same speed. The knees hurt a little bit more. There's some more stiffness in the neck, and you start to see those things play a bigger factor, and it becomes more interesting to add that layer as a performer as well.
And are you trying to gain weight like between the seasons to convey that, or is it just all prosthetics?
Well, it was a little interesting. For the second season of For All Mankind, I was also shooting that at exactly the same time as we were shooting Suicide Squad, or The Suicide Squad. So Ed was actually in pretty good shape for for the second season of For All Mankind. For the third one, it's it he's still this sort of kind of elite personality that he's not going to let himself go. He's not going to get he's not going to get fat. He's not going to get way out of shape. He's that kind of a person. Um, but of course, his posture is going to change. The walk is going to change. Those things start to play in.
Yeah, I find you such an interesting performer because I feel like you can kind of present very differently just through kind of more subtle changes. Like, you can be younger in the first season, older in the second, but also looking at, your other American like TV and film credits. Sometimes you're more all American, other times you're more Nordic, or you're kind of more of an action star, or you maybe just like have a different shaped beard and then you're kind of more of a seedy criminal. I'm wondering, what version did you want to present when you were cast in For All Mankind?
Well, For All Mankind is absolutely the most like all American character that I've ever done. He's like an American test pilot, astronaut, working for NASA. He is like the ultimate, like classic American archetype, and that might not be sort of what normally would have drawn me to a role. I think I would have tried to find something that has more edge or more, just a different angle of a person. I think is more interesting to me normally. But what I loved about this, first of all, the writing was so good. So, they weren't writing that archetype. They were writing what was underneath it and all the layers. But it was also that kind of a man who grew up in the 50s and 60s. That's usually pretty bottled up and doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve at all. It's like that sort of person that doesn't show emotion. But you have that kind of a person that suffers the ultimate tragedy of losing a child, um, and seeing that kind of a person break, that I was really interested in and portraying.
So as I mentioned, we're also seeing you on In Treatment now for the fourth season starring Uzo Aduba, but your character is actually not in therapy, so we don't learn as much about him. I'm wondering if you came up with any kind of backstory for your character, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty clear backstory to him. He was he's a guy that came from Philly, an actor, sort of a working class guy, not particularly hardworking. He's not really a person that is trying to excel, or he kind of skates by and doesn't put himself really um, at risk of failure or of to succeed either. And and he's a person that that I've seen a lot, and especially in Hollywood, but also growing up in the acting community in Sweden. It's it's a difficult thing being an actor, having moderate success or little success. You're so intertwined with the product, or you are what is being rejected when you don't get a role. And so I think it feeds a lot of insecurity. Just and even a moderately successful actor will still get a lot of rejection on a monthly basis if they're in the sort of auditioning process. And if you don't really catch that momentum, and you haven't figured out how to challenge yourself to take yourself to that next level, or you just don't really have that talent necessary to get there, it's it can be a difficult life to live, and it can be. I thought it was really interesting to portray it. It was definitely a version of myself. That could have been me. Um, and had it not been for certain experiences that I had in my life that forced me to push myself to overcome some fears and some insecurities, had I not challenged myself at the right moments, that could have been me. And so it was. I liked to. It was fun to play a character that could have been sort of an alpha, confident alpha male, but instead was not, and he's quite insecure, doesn't really know who he is, and is very easily wobbled by not getting the confirmation that he needs from the environment and the people close to him. And it was very intelligent writing that really crystallized the character. And it our sort of part of the story has its arc in the final episodes of the season. But it was a really interesting relationship, a very unusual relationship that was portrayed. And I think people are going to recognize it from life a lot, but they're not going to recognize it from having seen it on screen, because I can't really remember seeing that particular type of relationship being played out. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, there's a scene in episode 16 that people will be seeing pretty soon where he's on the couch with Brooke, and she's apologizing, and then he's kind of resenting her because he feels like that lets her off the hook too easy. And yeah, I thought that scene was just kind of maybe one of the best scenes that I've seen this television season. What can you tell me about filming that one?
Yeah, we had a few of those. The final episode of the season is basically a two-hander between me and Uzo. I don't know if have you seen the whole season?
No, we got 16 of the 24.
Oh, that's what I've been getting. Yeah, yeah. So there were several like really intelligently written scenes between me and her, and there's just there are these conflicts between them where they just view the world so differently, and they need each other for very different reasons. And I think that what they both feel lacks in the other person, um, towards themselves, is very different. So you could see how it could work out, but it's going to be tricky.
Let's go back to For All Mankind. Toward the end of the season, Ed, he finds out that his wife has cheated on him. He's appalled. And then I think his very next scene, maybe that takes place about half an hour later, he's getting into bed with somebody else. Can you tell me about what's going through his mind at that point?
Yeah, his world is crumbling, and I think Ed Baldwin is very much a traditional guy, and I think that he would never imagine himself having an affair. Just doesn't have that muscle in him. Um, but then just this shocking revelation from Karen, after everything that they've gone through, that it's a reaction of having become victimized in that way, having been cheated on, then trying to make yourself into the predator instead, and to kind of get even. I mean, I think it's just that, and then in the middle of it, he realizes how he can't. It's not gonna it's not gonna do anything for him, and it's just not in him.
Okay, and finally, I'm wondering what you learned about astronauts and how they conduct themselves that really surprised you and you're able to work into your performance.
Yeah, they're a funny bunch. There's such a combination of, you know, they're all so well educated and smart. They have a very unique set of expertise, because they're all very well versed in physics and math, and they have to have all this competence to be able to work things out on the fly if system starts breaking down, and and then they also have this streak of old school American heroism built into them, and yeah, I've spent quite some time with some real life astronauts now, and yeah, they're fascinating to talk to. I'm so jealous of having had that experience of seeing the world from afar. they all talk about that. It's such a monumental experience, and just seeing the Earth from the outside, and everything that you know and love is there together. And yeah, I think it would be good for everyone to get that experience. I think it'll make our little tribal stripes so feel less important.
Okay, well, Joel, thanks very much for chatting with Gold Derby today.
Thanks so much. Pleasure talking to you.